Morning, everyone, and please join me as we. Oh, I'm just letting one more person in. So please join me in God's prayer as we begin this service this morning. There are still some people coming on. Vernon Judo Club. I don't know who that is. So once again, welcome everyone to our Sunday morning service. It also happens to be Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I hope wherever you are, you will have a wonderful day today with your family. We'll begin this morning's service with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the recitation of the name of the Buddha or the Nembutsu. Namo Nobs, Namo Nobs, Namo Nobs, Namo Nobs. Next, I'd like to ask you to join me as we read our pledge together. And I'm going to bring that up right now. Okay. Oops, this is not what I wanted. That was the article. Sorry, I'm just bringing it up again. I brought up the article instead of the actual our pledge. I think many of you have probably printed this out. This pledge was actually written by our President Go-Monshu-sama in 2018, and it was to supplement the pledge that we've had previously. And my brother Roland read it last week during his talk, but I thought if we could all read this together, it would be good. So please join me as we read our pledge. Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Next, we'll have the sutra chanting. We will be chanting the Sambutsuge, which I have up there now. And so if you could join in the chanting, and I'll try to remember to scroll down so that you can follow along if you don't have it. If you have it in your seiten, it's the Sambutsuge. Okay. Namandabs, namandabs, namandabs. 이제 먹어 그녀세며 무여너샤 니지가드마니 슈거해뇨 가이시드함베 윤야그즈목 녀라여게 조세무리 쇼가그다요 고르지모 가이몬쇼지 삼마이치에 이덕무려 슈쇼게우 진다이젠네 쇼버드호가이 의진진노 그거가이타이 무묘요근유 세상야무 닌나시시 진덕무려 그근거다이 지혜지며 보며이서 신도다이세 강가사붓 다이쇼 가도쇼지 미흑에다스 으세조이 가이니쇼지 녀세사마이 지혜이조 고세토그버스 의교시가 이사이그그 이사나야 계시어벗 야그센노그마 무료다이쇼 준yo고자 그여이사이 시도쇼벗 은영은호 겐쇼흑약 인여거자 쇼벗세가이 무가게 무시세드도 오묘시쇼 엔시쇼곡 요세쇼지 이진난료 료가사붓 国土第一国学奇妙道場常設国女内容に無道祖が道愛み道達一切自法来生新熱症状伊藤が国永楽安の古物神妙是が心象発願の日力上上欲自も生存知恵無下上領子孫知が信行軽量心死食毒中画行精進忍術なまなぶなまなぶなまなぶなまなぶなまなぶなまなぶがにしぐ道具平等性際道図も大し往生Namanovs, Namanovs, 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 Namanovs. Okay, let me just stop sharing this. Okay, and I'll begin with my Dharma talk. You know, it's funny doing this Zoom service like this. I'm on one hand, I got my hand on my mouse as I scroll the sutra down, and on the other hand, I have my ding, my bell going. So I sometimes feel like, you know, those one-man bands where they've got the drums and all the instruments. I feel like I'm doing something like that, doing both the computer at the same time as chanting. But anyways, so for this morning, what I wanted to do is, first of all, bring up with you, and let's see, did I put it up? Oh yeah, here we go. I'm going to expand this here. I'm going to read, this actually comes out from my brother's talk last week. I feel like he sort of threw down a gauntlet when he talked about the 35th and the 41st vow of the Amida Buddha's 48 vows. And last week he was talking about perhaps discrimination towards the female gender. And he said, you know, he brought up the 35th and the 41st vow but he said, if you have any questions, go and talk to your minister. So I kind of felt like he was throwing down a gauntlet or something. So I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, I'd like to talk about it. And first of all, I'd like to read these two vows for you. So the 35th vow states, if when I attain Buddhahood, women in the immeasurable and inconceivable Buddha lands of the 10 directions who, having heard my name, rejoice in faith, awaken aspiration for enlightenment, and wish to renounce womanhood, should after death be reborn again as women, then may I not attain perfect enlightenment. Okay, this is one version of this 35th vows. It is written in numerous different languages. So this is just one version of it. The 41st vow states, if when I attain Buddhahood, bodhisattvas, bodhisattvas in the lands of the other directions who hear my name should at any time before becoming Buddhas have impaired, inferior, or incomplete sense organs, then may I not attain perfect enlightenment. Okay, so these two vows of the 48 vows are sometimes brought up as very controversial vows. Okay. Particularly for the female gender, the 35th vow seems misogynistic, if you will. It can be taken in that way. But what I'd like to talk about, first of all, I'm going to talk about several women in the history of Buddhism who are very important. Okay. As you all know, the Buddha's mother, Queen Maya, gave to Siddhartha Gautama in Lumbini's garden. But she passed away only 7 days after she gave birth to the historical Buddha. So the Buddha was actually raised by his aunt, Queen Maya's sister, Mahaprajapati. And Mahaprajapati became his stepmother, I guess, stepmother. And she was the one that basically raised Siddhartha. Now, it's said, and then at the age of 29, of course, when Siddhartha was around 20, he got married, of course, and his wife's name was Yashodhara. Okay? So what it is said that after the Buddha attained enlightenment, before going on his search for the truth, he had promised his wife Yashodhara that if he found the truth, he would return to the kingdom. So after he attained enlightenment, it is said that the Buddha and his disciples returned to Kapilavastu on numerous occasions. Kapilavastu, of course, was his the kingdom where he was raised. And it is said that at one time when the Buddha returned, he was returning because his father, King Suddhodana, was very ill and was about to pass away. And so when he returned, in fact, his father did pass away. And at that time, his mother, Mahaprajapati, she requested to join the Sangha. But there was no females at that time in the Sangha. And the Buddha actually refused. His refusal for having her join was he was afraid of what it would do to the other Sangha members. And so he refused on a couple occasions. And in the meantime, he and his disciples then took leave of Kapilavastu, and they went to a place called Vaishali. And it was there that Mahaprajapati, she was so determined to become a disciple that she shaved her head, donned the robes of a monk, and she, along with several hundred women from Kapilavastu, including the Buddha's wife, or Siddhartha's wife, Yashodhara, they all went to have an audience with the Buddha, and they asked for permission to join the Sangha. Again, the Buddha refused, but it was then that the Buddha's cousin, Ananda, asked the Buddha if a female were to forego her female attributes and become a mendicant, could they attain enlightenment? And the Buddha said yes. And this is when he relented to creating a female Sangha. And so from that point on, there was what we call the bhikshuni, who were the nuns. And the Buddha gave very strict orders or disciplines that they had to follow, precepts that they had to follow. So this was the beginning of the female entrance into the Buddhist Sangha. Now, in those precepts, it does sound as though the females were subservient to the monks. The nuns were subservient to the monks. So one of the things that I'd like to point out, which to me is actually refreshing, is the fact that the Buddha was a human being. Okay, sometimes we have this desire, or we put the Buddha on a pedestal and make him more than what he really is. The Buddha was a human being who awakened to enlightenment, and he tried to set ideals for all beings. Okay, so in saying that, I would say that the Buddha was probably not perfect. And as a human being, he had his own fears, his own worries. Okay? So it's not the Buddha that's perfect, it's the ideals that he strove for that are perfect. And so in his time, of course, the Buddha when he talked about Amida Buddha, and he expressed these 48 vows, the 35th vow does seem discriminatory in our present day, but in his time, this was a way of expressing equality, because women were of a lower esteem within society. So this was, in his time, his way of enhancing a lower esteemed being, to say that all beings will be equal. So this is the same reasoning for the 41st vow, but if you look at the third of the 48 vows, down below here, it says, if when I attain Buddhahood, humans and devas in my land should not all be the color of pure gold, then may I not attain perfect enlightenment. Okay, so this one actually, Reverend Henry Adams came to our temple for, I can't remember which, I think it was a one service. But he was, again, stating about the equality of all beings in the Pure Land. And so this third vow stating that all beings should be the color of pure gold, sort of just this image of everybody being golden and the same, is, again, the Buddha talking about equality. So leaving the Buddha then, one of the other things that I wanted to point out about the Buddha is there's another sutra called the Kalama Sutra. And in that Kalama Sutra, it talks about there's a village called Kalama. And when the Buddha visits that village with his disciples, the villagers all ask, or they come to the Buddha with some questions. And one of the questions they have is that they say that they're not sure who to believe or what to follow, because they've had numerous sages and monks come to the village, and inevitably each of them will tell them, oh, my teaching is the pure teaching, or my teaching is the correct teaching, and that you should follow my teaching and not listen to others. So at this point, the villagers are all confused as to what they should follow. And it is then that the Buddha, he makes a statement, and he says, do not believe in anything just because it has been written in sacred books. Do not believe in anything just because it has been said by the elders. Do not believe anything because others say it is the truth. But the Buddha then goes on to say, after examining it, and if it's for the benefit of all beings, then live up to those teachings. So what the Buddha is saying is that one has to question, no matter what the teachings, you should continue to question and evolve from those questions. So if we take it from that perspective, we can say that the 35th vow and the 41st vow may not be appropriately worded for our day and age, because we've come a long ways from the time of the Buddha. So instead of saying, if when I attain Buddhahood, women in the immeasurable and conceivable Buddha lands of the 10 directions who, having heard my name, rejoice in faith, awaken an aspiration for enlightenment, and wish to renounce womanhood, should after death be reborn again as a woman, then may I not attain perfect enlightenment. So if we take out any of the gender references here and just realize that, if all beings wish to become equal, and they should not be equal in the Pure Land, then may I not attain enlightenment. Perhaps something to that nature would be what the Buddha would say if he was here in this day and age. Okay, so the Buddha would have no problems with us questioning or enhancing. Although at the time, 2,500 years ago, this is what the Buddha said. But he would have no problems in us saying today, perhaps this vow will be changed to talk about more, not gender specific, but of all beings being equal. Okay? And in fact, if we think about the changes that have come over history, then we begin to realize, in fact, what a revolutionary Shinran Shonin was, the founder of Jodo Shinshu, because he was the first, as far as we know, he was the first monk who openly got married. Okay, so Shinran Shonin, up until the time of Shinran Shonin, in order to practice Buddhism, one had to become a monk or a nun, be celibate, go into the monasteries, etc. And in fact, Shinran had done that for 20 years. But Shinran Shonin eventually came down from Mount Hiei, and one of the reasons he came down from Mount Hiei was because he actually had a desire to have a family, which is a very natural desire. And so Shinran Shonin ended up getting openly married. And we all know, we all respect and we honor Eshini-sama, his wife. And she is also considered very important in our teachings. In fact, to the point that it is said, Shinran Shonin, when he did come down from Mount Hiei, he spent 100 days doing a vigil at a temple called Rokkakudo. And during that vigil, I think it was on the 96th morning, Shinran Shonin is said to have a vision. And one of the things that is said is that in that vision, he sees the image of what we call Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. And this Bodhisattva, the Kannon Bodhisattva, comes down and says, I will come back as an incarnation of myself, and I will become your wife. So from that, we can say that Shinran Shonin actually viewed Eshini-sama as an incarnation of Kannon Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva of compassion. So he respected her or held her in very high esteem. So of course, we see that from Shinran's perspective, all beings were equal. So he did not see women as being subservient or anything like that. And I think from our Jodo Shinshu perspective, this has been a very important aspect of our teachings, where women openly get entered become ministers, and we've had ministers equally here in our Naijin. We don't separate the female aspirants from the male aspirants or anything like that. So, as I was mentioning at the beginning, the Buddha would ask us to always reflect on all the teachings, including his teachings, and to see what is true and what is real. And perhaps in our modern day or in our level of thinking, we have come a long ways from that period of the Buddha. But we still have much further to go. And of course, we see that happening with the Black Lives Movement, where there is still inequality that exists. And that is part of the suffering of being human being. And of course, for the Buddha and for all of us, that is up to us to continue working to free ourselves from that suffering. And then part of that freeing up from that suffering is through learning about the teachings and learning about what we can do to ensure that there is equality amongst all beings. So with that, I hope I have been able to answer perhaps the questions that my brother brought up last week. And I'd like to close this Dharma talk this morning by asking you to please join me once again in Gassho as we, please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Okay.